First of all, I love podcasts, okay? But there's one podcast I think it's just terrible, okay? There's no talent. It's called the Establishment Exiles. I don't even know what that means, okay? It's a total ripoff of Chapo Trap House, okay? Pathetic. It's gonna be a complete failure, believe me. Ron is a total loser. Kevin and Brittany, they produce more fake news than CNN. Can you believe that? Mike is terrible, and nobody watches the Humanist Report, okay? Elise is a total wacko. She scares me. And let me tell you about Ashley, folks. She's a total fraud. Very sad, okay?
Hello everyone, welcome to the second episode of Establishment Exiles, and if you're wondering why we are just now having a second episode after the first episode premiered seems like 2 or 3 years ago, it's because I don't know how to technology. That's, I don't know it. So first of all, let me explain. Last time, we actually recorded an episode with David, Doel, with Ashley, with Kevin, with myself, and we had to scrap that entire episode because the screen recording software that I was using, it wasn't picking up my audio from the screen recorder. So basically, everyone was having a conversation, but you couldn't hear what I was saying. So it was just completely incoherent, and I botched it. But we're all back, and thankfully, David Doel, our first guest, decided to be cool enough to come back after I complete and utterly fucked everything up. So thank you all for being here. David,
no problem.
Welcome back to the show. Again, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So David, as you know, is the host of The Rational National. Also with us is Kevin Asani, Progressive Blacksmith. And we also have Ashley Hudson, Immovable Object, on Twitter. Mm-hmm. So thank you all for being back. So first of all, there was a lot that happened last week, and it's been really difficult for all of us to keep up with all the news. So I want to hand this off to our guest, first of all, David. When it comes to Donna Brazile's bombshells, what was your initial reaction to that? Because for me, I was excited to be vindicated, but it really set in that democracy was subverted. So how did you respond to that?
Yeah, so I woke up, I heard about the news, and I was shocked. So I mean, I don't think anyone really expected anyone from within the quote unquote establishment class of the Democratic Party to come out and essentially admit everything that we kind of already knew was going on. So I understand what you're saying from the point of it, kind of felt shitty because it just confirmed everything that we expected. But at the same time, that's exactly why, I was almost excited in a weird way, because it's like, finally, this debate should now be over, because here's somebody who was a DNC chair, and here she is exposing the actual agreement between the Hillary campaign and the DNC and how they work together to essentially control the whole primary process. And people can no longer deny that connection, because here's somebody who was actually there, saw the agreement, knows what went on, and is somebody that is a part of the establishment. So she can't just be smeared like every other person that has discussed this and has called it out as an issue.
Right.
So,
As the DNC interim chair, she has this legitimacy and credibility on this particular subject that is second to none. I mean, the WikiLeaks emails, in my mind, that confirmed beyond a shadow of a doubt that the primary was rigged. But to have Donna Brazile, who really, she gains nothing from admitting this, to come out and say it, I think that's really huge.
except book sales.
Yeah, except for, that's totally true, except for sales. Yeah. But to be fair, she didn't have to talk about that. She could have just harped away on Russia, and she still would have sold 1 million. Now she's probably going to sell 10 million, though, to be fair. Yeah, so kudos to her for being smart and bolstering her book sales, probably to most likely
at least
outpace
10
Hillary
times the
Clinton.
level.
What was that?
At least 10 times the book sales that she would have got otherwise, for sure.
Definitely. So I want to go to David on this. I'm going to get to Ashley last because I know you have a lot to say about this. So let me ask you, Kevin, how do you think the response has been, in your view, just collectively from the establishment? When you know, we talk about people like Chuck Schumer, Peter Dow, I don't know if you would characterize him as establishment, but yes. Do you think the response has been fair from the establishment? I mean, one person from the establishment, Elizabeth Warren, admitted it was rigged. So can you just give us your overall take on that?
I think the response has been exactly as we expected, and I am not surprised at all. A lot of it is just like, it's just a lot of hand-wringing and a lot of, you know, like, oh, well, what are you going to do? Bernie already lost. Hillary was going to win. You know, Bernie wasn't going to make it anyway. I mean, who cares? This is the past. Let's move on. So a lot of it is just trying to act like it never really even happened. And I honestly did not expect it. When I reported the story on my page, I was not surprised at all. I literally reacted to the whole thing as if it was like, well, duh. I mean, but was I surprised that it came from Donna Brazile? That was very surprising for me. I did not expect her to come out with this. That was a shocker, because I would not expect, like, as far as book sales and stuff go, yeah, but you're also going to get a lot of hate. And you're obviously going to get a lot of hate from the Hillary supporters, from the, you know, mainly the Democrats, the ones that people say Bernie is not a Democrat, that kind of stuff. And now they hate Elizabeth Warren, they hate Donna Brazile, they hate Bernie Sanders even more. So it's like they're all trying to just sweep this under the rug.
Yeah, it's important. What you alluded to is the gaslighting. And I think that we kind of saw this from a Glenn Greenwald article in The Intercept, where he brings up 4 mistruths that have come out, basically of the establishment wing of the party, trying to downplay the revelations. I believe one of which, I could be thinking of a different article, but one of these misinformation stories that were basically spread is about how Bernie Sanders also signed a joint fundraising agreement. But his joint fundraising agreement is not the same thing as the Hillary Clinton fundraising agreement, where she gets complete control of the DNC. Now, I want to go to Ashley and kind of get your initial thoughts, because I know that you have a lot to say about this, and I will give the floor to you because I know you're angry.
So yeah, to be honest, everything I'm going to say is probably things that y'all would say too. The thing is, I have so much to say. I don't even really know where to begin, because I kind of agree with what the rest of you are saying. One, it's like, okay, obviously I'm not surprised that this is the case. I'm surprised that it came out, and it came out this way, especially from Donna Brazile, who, by the way, is giving a talk at Auburn University, where I'm at, on a healthy democracy, like in a few weeks, which is insane. But anyway, yeah, I was originally planning on going and holding up signs, and anyway,
do it.
Yeah. So aside from all that, the thing that's kind of driving me crazy right now is just like, I still can't believe that anybody is still trying to twist it. Like, I put this on Facebook, but just like the mental gymnastics involved with still trying to defend Hillary and the DNC, it is mind-boggling. It is mind-boggling. I literally do not know how that is even possible at this point. I have a lot more to say, but I'll probably just rather bounce off y'all.
Sure. Well, you're speaking to something that really proves our point about the neoliberal wing of the party not really caring about policy. It's basically a cult of personality around Hillary Clinton. Because one thing that we all probably can admit is that even though we're so-called Bernie bros, I'm more than willing to say that I disagree with Bernie Sanders if he's wrong. I think that when it comes to Israel-Palestine, he's wrong. I think that on foreign policy, he needs to be more liberal. I think that during his campaign, he should have done more to reach out to people of color, particularly in the South, when Hillary Clinton was winning those votes. So I think that the difference is that we're all willing to be critical and have introspection. The other wing of the party is not. So let me ask you this, David, where do we go from here? If the primary was now rigged beyond a shadow of a doubt, it's undeniable. What do we do going forward? Is the party even salvageable at this point, do you think?
I think it is. First, I just want to address, maybe I'm super naive, but I thought, because this is Donna Brazile, she's part of this little clique here in Washington, that her coming out and saying this would finally be like, we can get over it and now move to a healing process, and the DNC could move to changing the rules that actually make the process balanced and fair. And yeah, that's not the reaction we got at all. And there's still there's no end to the amount of defense they'll have of Hillary Clinton and essentially the status quo. Now, when it comes to moving forward, that's a tougher question. And I think the only way, I do think that the Democratic Party is salvageable, but it has to be through a hostile takeover. So groups like Justice Democrats and Brand New Congress and these progressive groups that are pushing progressive candidates to be elected to the Democratic Party, I think that's the only way that the Democratic Party is salvageable. And much like the way the Tea Party took over the Republican Party, I think progressives need to take over the Democratic Party. And once that happens, then the party will be worth voting for and worth talking about. But in the meantime, there's going to be a lot of just a lot of the establishment avoiding the real issues, and a lot of progressives fighting for policy into essentially just an empty hallway where people that have the power currently don't want to listen. So it's tough, but I do think there is a way forward if it's through a hostile takeover.
Right. And I wanted to ask Kevin, what do you think this will mean for the party in terms of 2018, 2020? Do you think that this will negatively hurt the party since they're not able to cultivate trust? And in terms of hurting the party, will it also hurt progressives? Because, I mean, if the party is seen badly, even these progressive campaigns like Justice Democrats and whatnot, can that impact them as well, do you think? What's your thoughts on this in terms of the electoral prospects of the party?
I believe the progressives are emboldened, and rightfully so. And they have every right to be like that because, like you said before, we have been vindicated. We have been everything we were saying the whole time has been confirmed to be true. And as far as it goes for the Democrats in 2018 and on, I think the future is very, very grim. And I'm afraid that we're going to get another 4 years of Trump. But that's not because of what progressives said. And that's not because of what Donna Brazile said or did. But it's because of the Democrats. And they did what they did, and they got caught with their hand in the cookie jar, and they still got the crumbs on their lips, and they're trying to say I wasn't in the cookie jar, and they know what they did, but they're trying to salvage as much as possible. And they're talking about this race in Virginia with Ralph Northam, and he's like this anti-sanctuary city guy. He voted for George Bush twice. And there's this other person in New Jersey. Everybody's talking about this race as if it's like the end of the world if these two people don't win. I think the governor's races. And I'm like, I don't really give a shit. I'm not saying that in the sense that I don't care about Virginia and New Jersey, but these candidates are horrible. They're not even that good. I mean, what are you banking on? I just don't understand what the end goal is. You're just going to get more corporatists in there. So I honestly don't care. I'm very, very agnostic on the issue right now.
Well, I think it's hard to move away from the bombshell that was just revealed, because I think all of us are willing to admit that the primary was rigged prior to this bombshell that Brazile dropped on us. But even myself, I never could have guessed that it was rigged to this extent, where Hillary Clinton just took control of the DNC. I mean, certainly, you know, it's not that surprising given the way that the DNC function, but it's a little bit, you know, I was taken aback quite a bit when I learned that this joint fundraising agreement basically forced the DNC to have Hillary Clinton sign off on press releases even. So that's crazy to me. So I want to ask Ashley this question, because this is one thing I've seen. I don't know if you've seen this as well, Ashley, but one thing that neoliberals will do, or at least apologists for the establishment are saying is, well, look, this isn't Bernie Sanders' party. He's not a Democrat. So if the party does want to, quote, rig a primary against them, aren't they justified? I mean, how do you respond as someone who, I mean, you're fighting your ass off in a deep red state to get progressive Democrats elected. So, I mean, how do you respond to that?
Honestly, I guess it depends on my mood, but I respond a lot of different ways. So initially, I'm trying to think about it. So really, to me, I used to say, if you look at policy, not the people, which is something we in America really have no idea how to do anymore. How is Bernie any less of a Democrat than people running as Democrats, such as Hillary and Pelosi and whatever? He's far and away more progressive than they are. I'm sorry that like he doesn't have he's been an independent for however many years, and he doesn't have that, you know, D branded onto his chest like everyone else, or the R. And to me, it just kind of goes back to the tribalism thing. It's like it's not about what, I mean, honestly, I would even vote for Republican if it meant that they were going to get money out of politics, if they weren't going to take away our health care, and if they weren't going to be such war hawks. Far and away, because those things are far and away more progressive and Democrat than a lot of these so-called Democrats right now. And I try to tell people that when they argue with me, but people are just too stuck, honestly, on pundit talking points, and they just kind of parrot them. People aren't really critically thinking anymore, and it's really hard, honestly, to have a discussion when that's the case. Because like I said, it's kind of this just tribalism thing. It's like, if you're not on our team, care anything about you. It doesn't matter how much better Bernie is on women's issues or minority issues or anything than a lot of the Democrats. It doesn't matter. He's still not a Democrat, so he's still not our team. So fuck him. I mean, I don't know what else to say. That's how I see it. It drives me crazy, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a deflection. I mean, if you don't have anything to say, to actually defend your side because what they've done is indefensible, then you just say he's not a Democrat. He's sexist. He's racist. And I wanted to ask you also, Ashley, about the, because prior to Donna Brazile's revelation, she got a lot of criticism from progressives, and rightfully so, because Tom Perez purged progressives from the DNC and appointed her to the Rules Committee. And the entire line that they used against progressive this time was that, well, we just want women of color to not serve in powerful positions on the DNC. How do you respond to that?
Well, first of all, let me just clarify. Wait, aren't some of the ones that they purged, didn't they purge some women of color, also a transgender woman?
Yeah, the first transgender woman, they purged James Zogby, the only Arab American serving. Yeah.
So, honestly, my response to the diversity thing, I think I've said this before, is that, I mean, look at people, obviously like Nita Turner, you know, and there's plenty of other women of color too, or just, it's not the straight white male, if that's what they're going for, that are highly progressive. Like, they're very different. Like, why pick the people just completely against the interests of the rest of the people of color there? Because the thing is, they're like in the elite. They're in the elite group of the people of color. Okay, so they can go to the doctor when they need to. You know, they can they can go on vacations to Martha's Vineyard. Hello, Donna Brazile. Okay,
Yeah.
They can. People in the lower classes particularly even their own race that they're supposed to be representing, that they can do all these things that none of them would even dream of doing. So it's like they don't stand for anything for them. They try to placate people with wearing with things like, you know, like promoting vagina hat wearing, like like
That's so fucking goofy. What is that? It's crazy.
Well, let me ask you this, Ashley. Do you think it's reasonable, based on their logic, that Sarah Palin represents your interests as a woman better than Bernie Sanders? Because she's a woman, Bernie's not a woman. How do you respond? Because that's basically the logic, is it not?
It is the logic, and it's maddening. It's maddening. Like, it fucking drives me crazy when any woman or claims, or I've had women, and I've even had men, which is, but especially women, tell me that have basically tried to remove my woman card because I didn't vote for Hillary. I'm not a woman. Like, they're trying to define my identity for me, and because I didn't align with them, I mean, it's literally like they had to almost dehumanize the women that didn't vote for Hillary in order to be able to justify taking away their women cards. Like, I can't even like articulate how much it pisses me off. And like I said, it's almost even funny when men do it. I've had men do it too, try to tell me like I don't know what's best for myself or women, like silly me, you know, because I didn't vote for Hillary. It's just I don't even
It's disingenuous. It's so disingenuous. And who was it? It was Tom Watson who blocked me on Twitter because I was trying to bait him so hard into arguing with me on Twitter because I wanted to say, well, if you disagree with me, you're homophobic. He didn't take the bait, unfortunately. He just blocked me. I tried so fucking hard. But I want to ask David this because, you know, you have that outsider perspective. How much do you see the Liberal Party, for example, do they use identity politics against progressives to the extent that the Democratic Party does here? Like, can you give us some insight into what it's like there? Because I know that everyone is pretty much socially liberal in Canada, but yeah. How is it there in terms of the political climate with regard to identity politics?
It's weird. I hadn't really thought about that because that's never really come up. So I've never been disparaged as a progressive for, or I've never seen anyone try to use race or gender as an issue in terms of who you should vote for. And I think a lot of it really comes down to that we have more than two parties here. I mean, we have more than three parties. So there's liberals, conservatives, NDP, Green Party, Libertarian Party, and I think there's even more smaller independent parties. So there really is no limit to where you can find your views. And the last election, because everybody really wanted to vote out the Conservative Party and Stephen Harper as leader, there was kind of this coalescing around the Liberal Party. But I never felt like I ran as a Green Party in that election in 2015, and I never felt like I was talked down to by running for Green. And when I talked to people who may have agreed with me on the issues, they would say, sure, I agree with you, but I really want to get out Stephen Harper. So I feel like I have to vote for the Liberal Party. And that's what a lot of people did. So even if they disagree with your strategy, they never tried to talk down to you because of how you vote. And so yeah, in terms of identity politics, we just don't have those same issues here, at least as prevalent as they seem to be in the U.S., especially with the Democratic Party and how that becomes a wedge issue.
That's interesting, and I like that you brought up your run in 2015 for Parliament. I think that's fascinating. So I kind of want you to talk more about that. But let me just say this before you get into that. If all of us vouch for you to become an American citizen, would you run for our Congress? Because we need more people like you to run.
Maybe. The thing with politics is so, like, when you actually run as a politician, you realize, at least me, you realize how much you don't know. And politicians really have to be so well versed in, or at least feel like they need to be well versed in so many different topics. And the reality is nobody knows everything about everything. And you kind of have to rely a lot on where your positions are in terms of where the party is, and rely on other people in terms of how you explain the different positions, and you may have specific areas where you're more informed on, and you could talk more about those. But yeah, that's the one thing I noticed when running as a politician is there's just this intimidation of feeling like you have to know everything, and sometimes it's okay to not know everything, but as long as you're open-minded, and I feel like that's a quality that more politicians need is open-mindedness and being aware that you may have this position now, but you might be wrong. And if given the right information, you may be open to switching positions. And that's something I loved about being in the Green Party is maybe it's because the Green Party doesn't have a large presence in Parliament. There's only one seat right now held by the Green Party leader, Elizabeth May. But if you're a Green Party MP, you have the freedom to disagree with the party on positions if you want to. If you can explain it and you can defend yourself on whatever differences you may have, you're free to do so. And I think that's a strong a strong tool to have, especially when you, as a politician, you want to come off as a real person, and you don't want to come off like you're just, being a mouthpiece for whatever talking points that your party has, but you actually want to be able to connect with people on the issues. So being able to differ with your party on certain issues, which is, that's actually a difference that the US has, is that obviously Democratic politicians all have different positions on different issues. But in terms of the Canadian system, like a parliamentary system, the parties, you try to have the same positions as the fellow people in your party, simply because you largely want to vote together and actually come together on certain issues. But yeah, that's a difference I notice in the US is Republicans or Democrats will disagree within their party and they'll do it publicly, whereas that doesn't really happen in Canada.
That's interesting. So let me ask you this, because the political situation in Canada, while it's not perfect, I think it's definitely better overall than America. What made you want to run? Was it just the general sense of responsibility? Was it because you thought you had something unique to offer? Because for me, the thought of running in America makes me sick to my stomach, but I've thought about actually running in 2022 to challenge Ron Wyden in Oregon if he doesn't support Medicare for all, and I don't want to. So I probably won't overall, but I've thought about it. So what made you want to run in Canada?
It was almost done on a whim. So I'd become more into politics, and I wanted to get more involved. And so the funny thing is, it happened almost accidentally. So I actually called. It was after a debate that happened in Canada between the four main leaders, and I was so impressed by Elizabeth May of the Green Party, of her performance, that I wanted to volunteer and help out in some way. So I called my local Green Party chapter, and it turns out they didn't have somebody running for Parliament in that riding. So they asked me if I wanted to put my name in. So I was like, all right. So I put my name in, and then somebody else was also going for it. But then once he heard that I got in, he was like, all right, I'm out. So then I was like automatically the candidate for my riding, which was kind of a shock because I wasn't really expecting to be a politician. And then all of a sudden I have all this weight on me to be to be in these debates and get involved in the process. But I will say, if you're thinking about it, absolutely go for it. Because even if you don't win, and the chances are your first time you're not going to win, it's a very unique experience, and it gives you a different perspective on the political process, and almost in some ways gives you empathy for other politicians, and understanding that, yeah, they are under a lot of pressure to kind of answer to everybody and be aware of all the issues that are going on at once. And it's a lot of craziness, but it really, I would say it's totally worth it, just because you learn so much, and it really helps you have some introspection on yourself and just on the political process.
That's interesting. Okay, I'll keep that in mind. Because yeah, I was thinking about it lately, because I'm very angry that Ron Wyden has not co-sponsored Bernie's Medicare for All bill. And rather than call him up, which I have called him up and called up his office and left him long voicemails, why not just challenge him and try to get him out of office? But I don't know. We'll see. How about you, Kevin? You are in California, right?
Yeah.
What do you think? Would you ever consider running for Congress?
No.
No. So what do you think overall is the best way to affect change? And that's a huge question. I understand that. But I mean, just in a general sense.
I actually had somebody ask me that recently regarding the whole Justice Democrats thing we were talking about before off air. But But I think a lot of it boils down to you just have to convince people that the system is corrupt, which a lot of people do not believe at all, as we all know. And you have to tell them that, these groups that you're giving money to, just any group, doesn't matter what it's, DNC, RNC, Koch brothers, whoever it is, you have to boycott them. You literally have to do like a boycott, like what they're doing with Israel, boycott, divestment, and sanctions. You have to completely disarm them of this financial advantage that they have, because all the money that goes to them now, it could be going anywhere. We don't know where it's going to go. So if Kamala Harris is going to be running for president, how do we know the money the money that goes to the DNC is not being funneled to her, just like it was being funneled to Hillary, and not giving it back to the states? So I think we just need to boycott those different organizations and groups and let them know that that's not going to fly, and we're not going to put up with that. So
just take a stand.
Basically take a stand and just let them know, because otherwise this shit is going to continue, and then they're going to be, once they realize that, oh, okay, so this is happening, then they're going to be like, okay, so we have to change our ways, because we're desperate. We're desperate to get people on our team, Team Blue, whatever it is, and we have to be able to, get paid. We got to get money. Look how low the fundraising levels are for the DNC right now. They're completely in the tank. It's ridiculous. I really didn't know it was going to be that bad.
Same.
But when you look at the level of the low unpopularity of Democrats right now, it's actually not that surprising. But at first glance, I was definitely surprised, because I didn't know there was going to be that much of a revolt. So
right now, you mentioned Justice Democrats. Do you want to diverge on that a little bit more?
Well, I was having a big conversation with, I don't know how many people. It must have been at least 2 or 3 dozen people, and I was discussing the issue of how. Well, actually, it was originally brought up by a senator that is running against Dianne Feinstein, one of the multiple Democrats that are running against Dianne Feinstein for her Senate seat, and his name is David Grant, and he basically
say that one more time. Your microphone cut out. David Hildebrand, right?
Yeah, David Hildebrand is the guy that's running, and he's one of multiple Democrats, and he came out and said that Justice Democrats didn't want him because he's not a woman. They want to have a woman running, and they wanted Alison Hartson for Justice Democrats. So, I mean, I don't believe that to be the case, but I don't believe that to be the case in the sense that we have to do that with them, because we still have to see what's going on. We don't know what's going on behind closed doors with Justice Democrats. They could be doing everything, perfectly ethically. But a lot of people want to jump the shark and be like, oh, well, okay, so they're doing the same thing as the DNC. One person was advocating for having a woman in this race because she's a woman. So I don't believe in doing that with groups like that, because I want to give them a second chance. Kyle Klinsky runs that group. Jen Huger runs that group. So I have a little bit more trust in them. And I know you feel the same way, and I'm sure a lot of us feel the same way. And I know Ashley has an opinion on that too. But I just wanted to say that the people that I was talking to, they just wanted to fully cut off Justice Democrats now. And I'm like, okay, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Sure.
Let's relax, calm down. It's not the end of the world. This one person was, maintaining this honestly ridiculous position, but I think we need to evaluate a little bit, be a little bit more rational.
Sure, Ashley, do you want to touch on this?
Yeah. So I said briefly talked to also Kevin about this a little bit off air as well. So I'd like to start by saying, yeah, I think Justice Democrats is honestly one of the strongest things about progressives right now. We don't have a whole lot of, I don't know, I guess effective enough infrastructure. I guess that's kind of like strong enough to establishment infrastructures that are right now. So start out by saying, yeah, I really do support a lot of what Justice Democrats stands for. However, the thing with Hildebrand and the suggestion of not supporting him and because they were wanting to support a woman, I think it's problematic, and I think it's something that we need to address. But like Kevin said, not necessarily throw the baby out with the bathwater, because I think there are a lot of good things, and I don't think we should write Justice Democrats off because of it. However, what I do see with it is, like, and I mentioned before, it's kind of on a small scale. on a small scale, it suppresses voices in a way, honestly, such a way that I think has led us to the Trump-Hillary 2016. And like I said, not nearly to the same scale, because there's no way they're the DNC or anything like that. But I just think we need to be careful by not going down that road. And I think we need to catch problems now before they get bigger.
Sure.
We continue to just kind of focus on identity politics rather than. And the other thing too is that, from what I understood from the email, there wasn't actually a woman that they had in mind, I guess, to, I don't know if replace is the right word for him, but I think the argument in the email was that Hildebrand had a base already, had funding, he had support, and there was just kind of this ghost woman apparently that they wanted to support that doesn't exist yet. And I think that's problematic in a lot of ways. The other thing they talked about too is representation, and they said that I can't remember the exact amount, but the low representation of women in legislative seats, and that women constitute, I think, 51% of the population, in a tweet at one point. But the interesting thing is, if we really want to talk about representation, why aren't they looking for people from the working class, men, women, all races, ethnicities? Because the thing is, 2% historically, less than 2% actually, of people from the working class, when 50 to 60% of the country is working class now. How is that for representation? If we really want to go down that road, I said a lot there. I apologize.
No. I think that's all important. Now, the thing about this whole situation is that Kyle Kulinski himself did come out and say that whoever made that statement, he doesn't agree with them, and that, it was a disgusting statement, I think is the word he used. But the way that I kind of see this is, the person who wrote that email probably was thinking, well, inevitably, since Dianne Feinstein isn't a good candidate, if it's a straight white male, like David Hildebrand going up against her, then she's going to use identity politics. So maybe that person wanted to undercut that argument in advance. But at the same time, you can't become the devil, that you're fighting against, because of course we need representation of women, but of course policy is more important. So I do think it's you guys were kind of talking about this. We had a discussion on Twitter. I do think it's important because we don't want there to be a division that pops up, across progressives. That is, Justice Democrat progressives versus non-Justice Democrat progressives. Because there's a lot of great progressives like Sam Ronan, not running through Justice Democrats, that are great. Nancy Pelosi's challenger. I don't know why I'm forgetting his name right now. Stephen Jaffe. Yeah. I had him on my show. I feel horrible. I love you, Stephen. He's running not with Justice Democrats. So I don't want there to be divides. And one thing that I mentioned to you guys off screen was, I was worried about the whole draft Bernie / Justice Democrats thing being a divide. But on the progressive side, as long as we're all united, I think that we have a really strong chance of taking on the establishment. David, did you have anything to say about this particular issue? I'm not sure if you were kind of involved in the discussion.
I was following it on Twitter. So I sort of disagree with you guys a little bit. I think, Micah, I'm more with you on this, is just that I think Justice Democrats were trying to, it was more about strategy. So the candidate they're running, Allison Hartston, I believe her name is, she's a former teacher, she's an activist, so she is from sort of the same cloth as David Hildebrand is, but she also has the added advantage, I would say, of being a woman. And the reason why that's an added advantage is because, like you said, it sort of undercuts any of the arguments that the establishment class usually make against progressives, or at least the arguments they made against Bernie Sanders. So this is an argument that I try to help people understand. Imagine Bernie Sanders was a minority or a woman. I think regardless of rigged primaries, he or she, whatever this person was, would have absolutely won the Democratic primary, just based on the fact that that person would have had the same policies, spoke the same way, but had the added advantage of standing out by not being an old white man. And I think that is a strategic advantage that we can't overlook. Now, that doesn't mean that it should take precedent over policy at all. Obviously, policy comes first. But if you have two candidates, they're the same on policy, but one has the added strategic advantage of being a minority or a woman, I think that is an advantage when it comes to an election, especially against somebody like Dianne Feinstein, who has been there since the early 90s. So we shouldn't take this approach where we can't see identity at all as a thing, because there are advantages depending on where you're running to running certain people, as long as they have the policies that progressives believe in.
Right. And if they can't, what I'm finding out with this whole Donna Brazile revelations, not to completely jump back to that, is that if they're not able to use the "you're a racist straight white male," then they do have some other type of argument, though. Like they're saying Donna Brazile bought into Russian propaganda. Basically, some type of way to dismiss their argument.
I think most people laugh at that, though. Like, that's so ridiculous.
I agree. Yeah.
So
they do that with everybody. What difference does it make? Same person, same stupid argument every single time. Every response.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you guys are saying, and I can kind of see everybody's point of view on this. I'm kind of just looking at between, I don't have to make it, because I'm not going to vote in California, but between David Hildebrand and Allison Hartson, they both seem like great candidates, great people, but I do know that Justice Democrats, they have a vetting process. I don't know what that entails, but maybe because she does have previous activism experience. So it seems like, the person who wrote that email to David isn't entirely, correct or whatever. But yeah, I just think that we should all be mindful that, kind of like what David or what Kevin and Ashley were saying, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, because I think by and large, Justice Democrats is a very good organization that, they have this infrastructure that they're building. But with that being said, we need to make sure that we don't jump on teams as well, because there are some people that I've kind of noticed that dismiss Justice Democrats and just want to go with draft Bernie. But we really need to be as inclusive as possible when it comes to all these approaches. And if we really just get glued to one strategic approach, I think we're hurting ourselves. I think that anyone who wants to step up and do something, form an organization, I'm 100% down with you. And when I talked to Nick Branagh, who is the founder of Draft Bernie, he said the same thing. Basically, you don't have to take sides. A lot of people in politics, because politics is so divisive, you kind of feel this inclination to take a side on everything, when you don't have to take a side. You're being given this impression that there's a false dichotomy when it comes to every issue, when that's not necessarily the case. I think that David is a great candidate, and I also think that Allison is a great candidate. And looking at her history with Wolfpack, for example, I could totally see why Justice Democrats would want to go with her, instead of David, for example, just because that money out of politics, that commitment to it, I think that's really strong. But at the same time, David's a great candidate as well. So you can't discount him. So I mean, I feel like with California's jungle primaries, where you can get 2 Democrats potentially, the more candidates, the better.
Yeah, let me just say that I think that woman, the specific woman, her name is Sandy Maynor, Menor, that was sending the email to David Hildebrand's, David Hildebrand's, I don't know what spokesperson, and I believe that specific woman had an agenda. That specific person had an agenda to make sure that yes, it's a woman running again. So I don't think this was something from top down. I believe that, obviously, I do believe that Jank and Kyle and Zach Exley and one of the other guys that's the head of the organization, they decided, but I don't think they decided it based on women, because they're always, definitely Kyle, definitely Jank, they're always railing against that stupid identity politics bullshit. So I don't think it was from top down. People are acting like it's from top down. And Hildebrand says he has 5 other sources that also, so they got the same response in that email. So I don't know who that is, if it's that same woman who's in the email with Hildebrand's spokesperson. But I mean, if it is from top down, that is a problem. But I personally don't think it is, because I see the record based on what Kyle says, what Jank says. So,
Yeah, I totally trust Kyle's response when he says that, whoever made that comment is, he disagrees with them, because Kyle is someone who is, he's a very principled person. You can watch his show and he's been saying the same exact thing since he started. You know what I mean? So does anybody else have anything that they wanted to say about this issue? Ashley, did you want to chime in or?
Oh, I forgot. Good.
Okay, so if anybody, unless we have other topics that we wanted to address, I do feel like I'm forgetting something. I will say that before we wrap. So if anybody else had anything on their hearts this week, feel free to chime in. Anybody?
Hold on. Let's see. I know there's other stuff to talk about.
Just really quickly, this is also, I did mention this earlier, I forgot, also the Donna Brazile thing. I don't think we mentioned it. Maybe we did. But, she kind of came out with this, like, bombshell or whatever, and we were kind of talking about what that could mean. But the one thing I thought was interesting, I don't know if y'all saw it, I'm sure you did. Was it, like, yesterday or the day before? Right after she came out and said that she walked it back so fast. I don't know if you saw it, like, literally.
Yeah.
What was that about?
I don't know, but, like, I'm literally, I posted, I screenshotted 2 of her tweets, which were crazy. She pretty much, like, contradicted herself, too. In it. So in one she says, today's lesson being quoted by Donald Trump means being misquoted by Donald Trump. Stop trolling me. And then she put hashtag never said Hillary rigged election. And then the next one, Donald Trump says I said DNC rigged the system. First of all, I don't speak in caps, not what I said. It's like, wait, what's going on? Like I don't know what happened. But...
I think there's this hang up on the word rigged. I think some people think rigged equals fixed. So I don't think rigged. So rigged is simply giving one side an advantage to winning the primary. Like obviously Hillary had an advantage and she had a big advantage. Now that's not fixed. I think there are many factors that may have allowed Bernie to overcome the rigging, but it was still rigged heavily to one side. Now, I think what Donna Brazile is maybe trying to say is that it wasn't fixed. So it's not fixed like a boxing match, like Bernie wasn't paid to go down, for example. So they're actually, it comes down to just I think weird semantics around the word. And she's also trying to cover her ass, to be honest. I mean, she's clearly offended a lot of people who have been her friends in the establishment class, and now she's almost trying to walk it back while still trying to sell a book. So she's trying to be controversial at the same time not being controversial enough to offend her friends. So it's just this really weird combination of factors that I think are just making this situation really odd.
I have a question for all three of you. What do all three of you think is the worst part of this revelation? What is the worst part that makes you mad? Because I think it's the money laundering. I think it's the all that taking the money from the states and then not giving it back to them and then funneling it to them. I think that's terrible because it's so narcissistic and it's obviously on purpose. They're not like it's by accident,
Oh no, absolutely. I'm with you on that. I actually don't know what I think is the worst because ultimately, everything that happened here, in my opinion, of course, this is just my opinion, definitely led to Bernie losing the primary. But like I said, that's just my opinion. So I don't know. And then here's the thing I want to mention about that too. When I say Bernie losing the primary, we often talk about like, oh, the DNC screwed Bernie and all this stuff. But the thing is, like, we often kind of forget about even it's us that got screwed. Bernie is supposed to be just representing us. He's kind of like the figurehead.
Yeah.
They're the ones that got screwed. We always say, oh, they hurt, but it's us. And that's what's really offensive because I don't know. Y'all can chime in.
No, I agree with that, Ashley, because Bernie is just a vessel for our ideas. I think it was Kyle Kaminski who said that and used that word. He's a vessel for our ideas, which is true. Bernie just represents what we want to happen. But yeah, I agree. I don't know what's the worst part, honestly, but I think that the money laundering, it's particularly egregious because one of the main lines against Bernie Sanders was that, well, he doesn't care about down-ticket Democrats. He's not helping to raise money for they said that he's not trying to raise money for down-ticket Democrats like Hillary's doing, but she was taking 99.5%. They were getting less than 5% of the money she was raising. So, there was this veneer that she was trying to help out everyone when really she was sucking up all that money and taking it, and she didn't give a damn about down-ticket Democrats. Now, the thing about Donna Brazile, I think David makes a good point about how basically she's trying to walk a fine line. And when it comes to Ashley talking about how Donna Brazile basically repudiated herself, this is what I think has happened. And this is just, myself. I have no evidence for this. I think that Donna Brazile has put herself in this position to where even if Donald Trump says something that she agrees with, I think she's willing to come out against it, even if she looks like a fool, because Donald Trump said it. So Donald Trump can come out and say, apple pie tastes delicious. Donna Brazile, she would have to disagree with him because it's Donald Trump. And this doesn't change that. Now, I think that, David, when you brought up fixed versus rigged, I think that's such an important point to make. Because, yes, it was rigged. And since I'm a nerd, I'm going to use this analogy begrudgingly. So I don't know if you guys play Mario Kart. Anybody?
Yes, I do.
Used to.
Okay, you too, Ashley?
I played it yesterday, actually.
You played it yesterday?
Yeah, I did.
Say that again, Ashley?
I don't play it religiously, but I do.
Okay. So this is the way that I think of the primary. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, or feel free to add or subtract to this. So the way that the primaries is that Hillary Clinton was playing with items turned on. So she can use green turtle shells, blue turtle shells to hit Bernie Sanders. Whereas Bernie Sanders, items were turned off for him. So even though technically he could still win the race if he did a really good job and he drifted, perfectly on the tracks and whatnot, well, Hillary Clinton still had that advantage. So anytime he got ahead of her, she shot him with the fucking blue turtle shell that just homes in on him. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's basically the way that I visualize it. That's
a really good analogy, actually. That's totally what it is. She had all the advantages, and he was just stuck playing the basic game, and he didn't have all that stuff.
Right, and also, right before the race starts, if you hit accelerate, as I think it,
the 2 comes up.
The 2 comes up, right, and you get that boost. Hillary had that. Bernie didn't even have that option. No. So. She had extra mushrooms. She got extra items. Bernie got shit. He had to race purely based on skill alone. And in Mario Kart, we all know it's not just about skills. It's a lot about luck. So I'll be doing this, this really great race. I'll get the items that I need. I'll also have a lot of skill. And I'm drunk, so I'm like, fuck yes! So I'm screaming at my TV. And then I'll get hit with a blue shell. And then I'm in 8th place after being in first. So it's a lot about luck, and Hillary had everything on her side. So that's the way that I visualize it. I wouldn't say that race is fixed if items are turned off for Bernie and on for Hillary, but it's still rigged. Somebody has a huge advantage, and you can't deny that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I honestly don't think, because you said before earlier on the show, you said that one of the members of the establishment came out and condemned the whole rigging process, and you said Elizabeth Warren. I don't think she's necessarily part of the establishment. I just think she's, like you said, she's playing a fine line. I think
that's fair.
She definitely wants to be liked by everybody, whereas Bernie just doesn't give a shit. He's like, if you hate me, you hate me. What am I? I'm sticking to my principles. Now, I believe she does have principles, but she's trying to. I think part of it is trying to get up in the ranks and running for president. So she wants to get up. She saw what happened to Bernie. She wants to be like, yeah, you know what? I got to be nice to everybody. I got to kiss everybody's ass. I got to do it.
She's trying to play the game, whereas Bernie doesn't care about the game. He just plays.
The game is ridiculous anyway. It's stupid.
Yeah. Right.
You never win when you play the game.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, yeah.
Unless you're even if you're Hillary, you don't win because you think you're going to win, then you still lose.
No.
So,
yeah.
Exactly.
Did you have something that you wanted to say, Ashley?
Oh, sorry, I had my mic off. Yeah. So just kind of on your little analogy that you had, it kind of reminds me. So basically, the way you're talking about video game metaphor there, so basically you're saying the deck is stacked, which I think is kind of saying the same thing as rigged. It's not necessarily fixed, but there's still a stacked deck. Sometimes the way I kind of look at it, to be honest, you ever see those exercises or videos where when they're talking about privilege, when they'll have people step forward and step backwards.
Yeah, I saw that recently.
Yeah,
I saw that one.
Yeah, so things like that made me think about that, because while there wasn't necessarily maybe to some degree the systemic privilege that those videos and those types of, I kind of see it very similarly.
Yeah.
So it's sure, okay, so for instance, a person of color, especially a woman of color, who is comes from a low economic background.
Yep.
So yeah, sure, she can. There's a chance get ahead of the middle to upper class white male who, has all this education and whatever background. There's a chance if she works hard enough, pulls up those thing like that. Sure, she can do it, American Dream and all that stuff. But like the chances are like this.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's like it's possible, but do you really think it's likely? Because look at all the advantages that this other person, the straight white middle to upper class male has over it like that.
I think that totally makes sense, and it's not just like the way that we feel. This is backed up in research. I don't know if you guys heard about this study. Basically, when I don't know who did the study, so forgive me for this. Maybe if one of you know, you can help me out. But they looked at applicants from different ethnicities, and the applicants that had a name who the person who was looking through them thought sounded black, they were less likely to call that applicant. So I mean, that alone gives you a disadvantage if you have and that somebody's name doesn't necessarily have a bearing, obviously, on how they're going to perform at the work, but just by having a black name, it gives them a disadvantage. So the deck is stacked in a multitude of ways against us, socially, economically and whatnot. And when we say that it was rigged, I think that it's undeniable, that the primary was rigged against Bernie Sanders. Now, is it the case, that women typically do have a harder time advancing in politics than men? Well, of course, we're not denying that, but to basically ignore the facts that are undeniable, that the deck was stacked from the beginning, I think you're just being disingenuous at this point. So for all the neoliberals who still won't admit that it was rigged, but think that Pokemon Go flipped the election against Hillary Clinton, I don't know how we can ever unite the left and the center left, because those people are not serious actors, in my opinion. I don't know. What do you guys think?
There's no point in uniting with them. Honestly, it goes both ways. We're not gonna let go of the power or lack thereof that we have. They're not gonna let go of the power, which is much more than us, that they have. And they're gonna come up with every possible excuse to throw at us. So whether it's sexism, whether it's Pokemon, whether it's Russians, whether it's third parties, whether it's James Comey, whoever the hell it is, none of that is going to change. I think they've come past. I mean, remember, after the primary is when they did the dossier for Donald Trump, and then they started to come up with all the Russia, and they rigged it and blah blah blah, and so like they had everything in preparation for a possible loss. And
I think I think it totally depends on who you're talking about when you say neoliberals. I think if you're talking about the leadership, yeah, absolutely, you can't win the leadership over. But if you're talking about people that watch cable news, I think they're totally winnable. It's just the fact that they watch cable news and they don't watch YouTube.
Yeah, but cable news, everything is talking points and sound bites. I don't know.
Exactly. That's why. But we can reach that audience if they start watching and listening to us.
Of course.
That's why I think those people are reachable. But in terms of the leadership, yeah, I mean, you can't change the media. You can't change the establishment within Washington.
I just feel like those people are stuck on Team Blue, and they only want to be on Team Blue. They do not want to be on another team, because to them it's all about the. Remember, it's not about the policies for them. It's about the party. And that's what all of us always say. We always say focus on policy, not party. Party doesn't mean anything, because look at all the people in the Democratic Party that believe in a lot of the same things that the Republicans believe in. Dianne Feinstein being one of them. It's a perfect example. And look at how many she voted for the Iraq War. Hillary Clinton voted for the Iraq War. In some aspect, Bernie did support one of some interventions, but nothing like Hillary, nothing like all those. Yeah,
I think it was Afghanistan, where he just said he wouldn't pull out of Afghanistan necessarily, even if he might draw down troops.
Yeah, he believes in like drone strikes and stuff. Like see, like you were talking about before, how like we all take issues with some things that Bernie Sanders believes. Those are one of the many money things, but it's obviously not as bad as Hillary, not as bad as.
Well, it's not a cult. If you compare the big, there was a Reddit thread about me where somebody in the Hillary Clinton subreddit said that I'm the quintessential Bernie bro. I think that when you look at the other side, what would be the quintessential Hillary bro? I mean, I can't think of anyone other than Peter Dow. Yeah. I'd like to think there's a night and day difference between myself and Hillary Dow. and Peter Dow.
Might as well be Hillary Dow.
Might as well be Hillary Dow. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
I don't. I think that's a ridiculous point, obviously, but people are gonna want to think that because they're like, oh, well, you love Bernie, but I mean, and yeah, I mean, to be fair, a lot of us do not, don't go after Bernie like Hillary, but that's because, I mean, obviously we all have our biases, but we're not stupid. We know Bernie has positions we don't agree with. Every person, there's no perfect political candidate. Jill Stein, I voted for Jill Stein. I don't know if you did. I don't know if Ashley did. Yeah, Jill Stein's got some fucking weird shit she's saying. She's talking about like how Wi-Fi is really toxic and
right,
weird things. I was like, but I don't know. I didn't care about that. Like, that's not a reasoning to not vote for her. That's just one belief that she has that, but like, what? I can't, because of that she believes that about Wi-Fi. I shouldn't vote for her, but I should go vote for Hillary, who voted for the Iraq War, voted, supported trade deals, outsourcing and all that stuff. No, it's not.
What's funny too is that they'll use that argument against you. They'll say, well, Jill Stein believes in this, without realizing they're just accepting all the stuff that Hillary believes in that they may not also believe in. So there's no perfect candidate. I'm
actually curious because I know a lot of the talking points used against Jill Stein is that, she attended a meeting or a gala in Russia with Putin at her table. Mm-hmm. Is that even legitimate? Like, is that a legitimate reason? Is that a legitimate argument to use against her? I don't even really know.
Well, look, here's the thing. She attended a dinner in Russia that Putin was there because this was something to celebrate, I think, RT for like 10 years. Right. So RT, for those of you that don't know, it's an American based news show that's funded by the Kremlin. Yeah. And the thing about RT is that even though it's the case that it is funded by the Kremlin, so you have to be cognizant of that fact. The people who run these shows, like Tom Hartman and Lee Camp, these are great progressives, and they're not running things by Vladimir Putin before they go on the show. There is that separation. So the way that I kind of think of it is like there's that separation between the British government and BBC, but at the same time, I mean, still be question it. If I were Jill Stein, I wouldn't have attended that meeting just because had I been able to see into the future, then who knew that we'd turn into red baiting again or turn to red baiting again.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, she did because she gave a speech. So the speech that she gave there, she did criticize Russia's kind of like oligarchical system where they're it's not a democracy. She went after it, but I mean,
well, she said she wanted to talk about ending Syrian intervention. Right. That's what she wanted to bring to the table, but she couldn't really do that because
Russia's an ally. But Russia's an ally of Syria. Iran's an ally of Syria. So all these countries are, backing the idea of definitely the U.S. getting out of Syria. So.
But before this whole infamous picture with Jill Stein and Putin and Michael Flynn showed up, what were they using to criticize her? The weirdest things. Like you brought up the Wi-Fi point. I totally thought that was weird. And on my show, I'm like, okay, as long as this doesn't have any policy implications, I'm still down to vote for Jill Stein. But another thing, John Oliver, talked about Jill Stein, and he brought up these old songs that she used to sing. They were like folk songs, and he put up the lyrics on the screen, and we're like, this is the lyrics. How weird is that? And I was like, I don't give a shit if she was like a rap star in another dimension. Like, that's not, what are the policy implications? And it's funny, now that, Ashley, you said that you voted for Jill Stein as well, and people are saying that you were, you get your woman card revoked because you didn't vote for a woman when you did vote for a woman.
But she doesn't count though because she's Jill Stein.
She qualifies as a boy. She has a boy card because she's a cyborg.
Apparently, she's a cyborg.
Totally. Okay, so unless anyone else has anything they wanted to talk about or bring up, I think we'll end it right there. We've got about an hour. And I would like to say, I don't know, I would vote in dedicating this episode to Angry Burner on Twitter, otherwise known as Peter Douche. He was suspended. One of the best parody accounts on Twitter, suspended.
Yeah, and a lot of people of color, a lot of women of color have been getting kicked off of Twitter. I think it was Katie King, I think her name is. I think she's a really good friend of Nina Turner, and I spoke to her. Yeah, wow. So it's happening, man.
Wow. Go ahead, Ashley.
A woman of color. I think her handle on Medium. I think it's like I don't know if I'm misquoting this. Charlie.
Yes, Sanders. Charlie. Yeah. I spoke to her too.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's the woman that's friends with Nina Turner. I spoke to her. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So she was called like a in her here, but something along the lines of like a black Russian infiltrator or something along those lines. Like
Wow.
apparently that's a thing. So she
How's
was
that not
like
sexist? That's like totally sexist.
So, I guess she got banned from Twitter, and I don't know. Like, I think she said she's been banned for like, was it a year?
A year? Holy shit.
I could be wrong. I might
hope
be
not.
misquoting, but anyway, she was still banned for whatever reason. Just so yeah, but
That's ridiculous. And
Wow.
speaking of the whole Russian thing, isn't Jill Stein? She is part of Mueller's probe now, I believe. She,
oh,
as far as I know, he incorporated her into it. And I was joking about this, but who knows? It might be serious. I interviewed Jill Stein in 2015, no, 2016. So I'm like, oh well, I talked to Jill Stein. I must be part of that probe as well, because anyone who talks to Edward Snowden, they're like watched by the NSA closely. So I was thinking like, oh my gosh, I'm probably going to be I'm going to be part of Mueller's probe, and he's going to find out that my connection to Russia is that my dog's name is Vladimir. So
That's cute.
He's probably watching right now.
Yeah,
I'm sure. What's funny is that the reason why I named my dog Vladimir, just because I have been accused of being a Russian bot, is because I got my dog in 2013, and I just finished a class where I wrote a really long paper about sexism in Russia, and it was when Vladimir Putin was basically trying to ban gay people from existing. So I named my dog Vladimir Putin. That's kind of like, haha, there's two homos that just adopted a dog, and they named it after you. That's kind of like a fuck you to him. So it's not because I love Russia so much. I haven't even fucking left Oregon, basically, so they can't. Feel free to investigate me, but it is weird that Jill Stein is being looped into that as well. But yeah, the banning of the Russian bots, anyone who's associated, this is like, it's a witch hunt. It's a new neo-McCarthyism. It's just ridiculous. But yeah, hopefully, Peter Douche will get his account back, but who knows? Hashtag free Peter Douche. Yeah, that's what I guess we'll end right there. Sorry, right, Peter. We hope you come back.
Yeah.
So thank you all so much. Before we leave, David Doel, can you tell us where to find you?
Yep. Go to therationalnational.com to check out the YouTube page, or youtube.com/therationalnational. And I'm at David Doel on Twitter, DOEL.
Perfect. And how about you, Ashley?
Well, I guess you can follow me on Twitter. I'm immovable object at 705. Nothing at all creative, but that's where I'm at. So, yeah, follow me if you feel like it. If you're bored,
follow where everyone do it.
Yeah, really.
All right, Kevin, where can we find you?
Yeah, I'm on twitter.com/progblacksmith, facebook.com/progblacksmith, and yeah, that's all where I am. I'm always on Twitter. I'm constantly retweeting everybody, so check it out.
And you can find me at humanistreport.ru, based out of Russia.
Oh yeah.
No, humanist.report.com, at Humanist Report. So yeah, and follow the show, Establishment Exiles, at estabexiles on Twitter. Check us out at estabexiles.com. Yeah, we'll see you guys next week for an episode with Elise, Ron, and I believe Kevin.
Yeah, I'll be there.
All right, so yeah, I won't be there because I'll be on Tim Black's show.
Okay.
But yeah, it's gonna be a phenomenal show. Tim Black is fun to hang out with. He's just funny and awesome.
Cool.
Nice.
All right, guys, take care.
All right, see you later.
Later.